Okay, transcription stopped. Right, everyone. So yeah, to the first part of the final learning unit. Yeah, fairly important. Some stuff that we need to look at. So if we think of where control is in terms of the overall picture from an organizational planning, organizing, leading, and control perspective, the one thing we know about control is that control and planning are Siamese twins. And the way that it works is that you would normally have planning here, where you do your, creating objectives, creating plans to achieve those objectives. In terms of control, you will set standards. So here you have objectives. Those objectives indicate what we want to achieve. Here we will set standards to tell us how well we want to achieve it. Okay, how well. Sorry, I'm writing with the mouse at the moment. How well. So if we have an objective of improved customer service ratings to be at a certain level, here you could have an objective that to answer the phone into external calls within the first 30 seconds, or get back to customers in terms of queries within 24 hours. So the objective is customer service improvement. The how well would be essentially those kinds of standards within 30 seconds, or get back to customers within 24 hours. So it's the difference between what we want to achieve and the how well we want to achieve it. So in terms of control, it really is about minimizing what we achieve in terms of what the ideal is versus what we get. So in the ideal world, what would we essentially rate ourselves in terms of perfection? And what control attempts to do, it tries to draw you closer to perfection. So a lot of organizations do a lot of planning, but they don't do much controlling. It's almost too easy to plan. It's too difficult to control. Okay, so it is about alignment, guys. So in terms of the different types of control, it would really depend on areas in terms of physical control. So that would obviously be maintenance and how well your machines, plant machinery, equipment must operate. Human control, often done through performance appraisals. Information control in terms of accuracy of the information. Financial controls, you have a variety of financial controls, and those generally translate ultimately to some form of ratio that you would calculate. So budgets, etc., would be in that. So in terms of that, I think nothing too dramatic here, but what I want to look at is this one here, but I'll go into more detail with this. Yeah, no, we'll spend a bit of time on the steps in the control process. So if we go again to my wonderful picture, which I now have closed in terms of paint. So if we go back to where I was, so planning tells us what we want to achieve. Here, controlling tells us how well we want to achieve it. And it's an important concept, guys, because when we know how well, if we can maintain standards, we should 100% be able to achieve the objectives that we've set as part of the planning process. So if we look at the steps in the control process, and this is generally pretty important, okay, guys, if we look at it from a sequential process. The first one is to establish standards. The standards would be the how well, would be to answer the phone within 30 seconds, would be to get back to customers within 24 hours. Give me other examples of customer type measures that we would use to determine how well we deal with customers. What other measures are there? I'm having my vehicle serviced tomorrow, so I've had the car a year. Definitely, we want to reduce complaints, and then we'll look at how we measure the complaints in terms of that. So when we think of complaints, often it will be you're measuring your performance. Surveys would always be how as measuring your performance. I'm talking about those standards, those specific standards. So for Varsity College, I expect that one of the standards, if I finish my marking and I load it onto the sim system, if I communicate to them that it's there, I would expect that they would respond within 24 hours of releasing those marks. That's the kind of standards that I'm looking at. Okay, reviews would always be how we measure the performance. Okay, in terms of courtesy calls, yeah, you could have a standard that after service is received, courtesy call within 24 hours and follow-up calls within another 24 hours to deal with issues. Mystery shoppers is also measuring performance. So guys, please get this clear in your mind. In terms of establishing standards, that is Rowan, it is an expectation, but in order to deal with an expectation, you need to set a standard. You can't just assume that because it's an expectation that it will happen. So what we do in order to measure that expectation is we set a standard. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, so remember the standards is the how well, guys. It is the how well. If we had to think of standards in terms of a drive-through at McDonald's or at KFC, McDonald's has several standards that they adhere to. The first one is how long it must take between a person placing the order and receiving the order in the drive-through. What we see in Pietermaritzburg sometimes is you'll place the order, you'll go pay, and then because they are measured in terms of cameras, they will tell you to go park somewhere and they'll bring the order to you because because they're taking too long to put the order together. All of those are standards. They even have standards in terms of how often you have to wash your hands. Another standard they have is that if you get to the front of a queue, you have to be served within X amount of seconds. I saw standards in our Pietermaritzburg licensing thing that once you get to the counter, your issue will be addressed within 20 seconds. Um, it's different to rules. It is the how well. The rules are don't do this. This is almost how well do we do things, guys. I don't know if this is making sense. Complete sense. In my mind, it's making pure, complete sense. Absolutely. So that is a standard. So the key thing in terms of these standards, we want time limits also put to it. So the standard as well as the time limits. The measuring performance would be the stuff that you guys had suggested. From a measuring performance, it's surveys, it's literally checking the actual answer phone ring to the answer time. All those standards can be monitored. What we then do is we have that comparison. So our standard is up there, and so that's the standard. And then we look at our performance. So in the ideal world, that performance line would perfectly match the standard. But I think also we also realize that there's the human factor built into it. And sometimes performance is below standard. So once we've done that measurement, is we have to do a comparison of that performance against the standard. And then we need to take corrective action. If this is very narrow, so we have that top scenario, then it's absolutely fine. You move on, you don't change anything. If the performance is significantly less, you have a set of options. Or if the performance exceeds the standard significantly, because we've set the standard deliberately low, and that might happen when you ask employees to set their own standards. So what happens then? Maintain status quo. Here we look at what can we do to change and improve the deviation. What additional training do we need to move the person out of the job? There's so many alternatives there. Or you change the standard. Often we change the standard when we ask employees to set standards because they may set it deliberately low. Guys, for me, that is an honestly is an NB question. Okay. I tend to always, I know that that's one of the ones I had seen previously. Please know how to do that. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of these control features, guys. Remember, in terms of the stuff that we've discussed. The other thing that I want to spend a little bit of time on, I think when we think of control, we tend to think of making sure that we achieve certain aspects of an organization and what happens in an organization. So I just want to look at this as well quickly. I'm just trying to remind myself. Sorry, guys. Please just give me a second. I'm trying to get my head around something here. Okay, just want to see something here. So when we look at, my apologies, and I should have done this first, because often when we think of control, we first of all have to look at why do we have to have control. So there are multiple reasons why an organization needs to control. The first one is to adjust to environmental change. Now remember when I said here that planning and control are Siamese twins. I just want to get a new one and save. If we think of where planning fits into the process, so often you operate within the context of an environment, and we know that this environment is volatile, it's ambiguous, uncertain, and it generally is very difficult to predict. What we then do is we create a strategic plan. So the strategic plan in an organization is the interface between the organization, which is over here, and the environment. We also know that in terms of the strategic plan, you would normally have your three phases: strategy formulation, strategy implementation, and then evaluation and control. From an organization's perspective, your strategic plan will generally look like this. You normally will have your vision, your mission statement. You guys would have done that. You would have had your long-term objectives. Oh my word, that is a mess. I'm so sorry. Long-term objectives. However, we know that part of this process is that we cascade objectives. So our long-term objectives become annual objectives. Those annual objectives relate to our different functional areas. Now, one of the things we see in terms of those objectives is that this here happens to keep us aligned with the environment. But when we then think of what we do from adapting to an environmental change. As our objectives will change, so too will our objectives and our standards change in terms of the organization. The second one, it almost limits the accumulation of error. I always think that when we have a traditional production line, and in the old days, this used to happen often. Remember, in a production line, you would have transformation happen across a range of stations. So you'd get your inputs here and it would transform there. One of the problems is in the old days is that your quality control guy used to stand at the end of the production line and he would do quality control. If he discovered that there's a quality issue, what it means is that the product you've made would have to almost go through the entire process again. And by the time he looks at it, you might have manufactured 100 items with issues. So what we often do in terms of limiting these kinds of problems is what we try and do is get to that as early as possible. So, in terms of modern organizations, we know that modern organizations don't manufacture, they're assemblers. The manufacturing happens elsewhere and the components arrive here, and the organization then Lego blocks those components together. So to limit the accumulation of error is the moment you see there's an issue, you stop. So if we take it to a customer service job, if you've got a receptionist who doesn't answer the phone within 30 seconds and people start writing on Hello Peter, etc., you will then have more problems to deal with. But if you could find out early that she is ignoring the phone, you could deal with that because it all accumulates. And then the next one is modern organizations are as complex as heck, guys. Modern organizations are very, very complex. We know that in terms of those complexities, that the connects in organizations and what links to everything else is nearly impossible to maintain. And if you then add to that the fact that some organizations are multinationals, and when we think of multinationals, I mean, just a company like Tata, oh, what am I doing, idiot? If we think of a company like Tata, Tata will have a head office with multiple divisions, and within those divisions, you'll have different functional areas. So modern organizations are a complex mess. And then what we generally do is it allows us to coordinate better between functions. Now, again, in terms of my production line that I've now destroyed, is the inputs would normally be negotiated by your purchasing function. The transformation process, the steps in the production line would be done by manufacturing or operations. The marketers or the salespeople would get this out. And if mistakes are made, if the mistakes are there, the potential is that your salespeople could sell rubbish. So we try and deal with organizational complexities. And it's about minimizing costs, guys. Remember, we know that modern organizations are desperate to minimize costs. These are important bits as well, guys, in terms of what we need to do. Okay, so it's Learning Unit 8 and it's slide 4. Please, can you just find where the discussion of this is in the textbook and share that on the group? What else is there that I need to be concerned about? I think for that learning unit, that is, yeah, those are the two important ones that I would worry about. Sorry, something is happening with my slides. They're irritating me a little bit here. Close that. So yeah, so in that last learning unit, guys, remember, just as a reminder, we need to look at that. The other one that I think, yeah, although we rushed through it fairly quickly, And then I'll give you a second now. I think I did skip over this, and my apologies for doing this. This is your Learning Unit 7. We didn't really spend a lot of time on Learning Unit 7. In terms of Learning Unit 7, yeah, innovation and change. I think from an innovation perspective, we need to just look at this. So when we think of organizational innovation, it's all about reinventing yourself. So innovation is really that aspect of every organization that allows it to remain relevant. So from an innovation perspective, I think we always have to remember that there are two forms of innovation that we see initially, and it divides into other bits and pieces. Radical innovation would be those kind of innovations that completely change the world, that rattle cages. It is when Google was launched. If you think of the number of, if you think of the number of um, industries that Google destroyed, it really changed the world. I mean, what had to disappear as the consequence of Google's launch, guys? What disappeared as a consequence of Google's launch? Can anyone remember? Encyclopedias, absolutely. AOL, absolutely, Tariq. But also products that disappeared. I mean, who still has encyclopedia? It's spelled correctly, cyclopedia. Be minus 25%, Becca, to remind me how old I was. I was already 33 when it was launched. Oh, Bianca's going to struggle to pass this. I love it. Good luck, Bianca. When was it launched? Was it 96 or 98, guys? I think it was 96 or 98. 96. Thanks, Rowan. But remember, guys, who still has a GPS, a TomTom, or whichever the other makers? Yeah, I mean, imagine maps, guys. So all of that. So radical innovation is where a brand new product that often renders previous products completely obsolete is launched. They change things significantly. Okay. Now remember, in terms of radical innovation, it could be anything from products to services. I mean, if you think of what we think of delivery services and food delivery and all of those things and how apps have updated it. If you think of what Uber did to taxis and metered taxis. Incremental innovation comes from the term Kaizen, small ongoing improvements. Online banking, absolutely. Online banking as well. So I think definitely those would fall into that kind of radical changes. Incremental stuff, small ongoing improvements. So if you think of smartphones, initially it rattled cages, and then smartphones go through smaller improvements, and then there's always a major explosion of a new radical innovation. Guys, and then also just remember, we see it from a technical perspective, so products with services, but we also see it in terms of management. There's so many new theories, processes, approaches to management that we have to deal with. For me, those are important. And all of those, we find them here in terms of product innovation and process innovation. Product innovation, think of the first iPhone, which was a brick with buttons. It was good for hitting people with. And if you think of what iPhones do now, the same with process, how we create, when we think of automation and AI and all of those kinds of things, significant process innovations happen all the time. Okay, guys, I also just want to spend a little bit of time on this one. Yeah, I want to chat a bit about this. So that is learning unit 7. I hope somebody caught where they were. Learning unit 7, slide 18, 19, 20. Um, and then I just want to also look at I just want to spend a bit of time on this one as well. Um, okay, I just want to go through this organization change. I think one of the things we see in organizations is the difference between planned change and reactive change. Planned change is often the consequence of your strategic plan, where we've looked into the future, we've tried to discern what is happening in the future, and we've tried to create an organization that would be able to deal with the changes in the environment. So it's organized, it's ordered, it's timely, and it really is about preemptive action in terms of changes in the world. Reactive change is when COVID hit. If you think of what your organizations did in terms of COVID, I mean, so many companies were completely lost. One of my favorite reactive change ones was the New York Library, who was about to send all their staff home. And someone said to them, why don't we use our 3D? You were in matric, Bianx, matric in 2020, matric in 2020. Holy guacamole. Bianca, so you are not even 23. Bianca, how old are you now? Oh my word. Minus 1% for every year that you've been on this planet. Don't worry. Oh, happy birthday for the beginning of the month. What day in May was it, Bianx? Well, my birthday was also the 6th, and I don't think you wished me happy birthday, so minus 25%. Absolutely. My birthday is also the 6th. Did you? Then I'm now wishing you happy birthday. Happy birthday, Bianx. I wish you had told me only important people were born on the 6th. That's plus 50% for sharing a birthday with me. Okay, guys, and reactive change is when something goes wrong and we have to catch up. Think of what schools did. All of a sudden, they had to start teaching online. The New York Library, who started printing 3D masks, sorry, started printing face screens for people using their 3D printers. I mean, amazing what people can do when they have to. Guys, I also just want to, just spend a bit of time on, yes. Oh, Michaels, you remember that? Wonderful. Yes, I remember that. I didn't mind the lockdown. I quite enjoyed the lockdown. I wished I had more beer stocked for the lockdown. I will give you that. Um, I think I didn't have enough beer. That was the biggest suffering. The rest was quite easy. I also think, guys, yeah, please just spend a bit of time looking at. Um, I'm trying to think in my mind. Um, yeah. Okay. Sorry. So definitely look at that. And then. Okay. Please just give me a second. I'm just trying to find something here. Okay. Guys, I also think just have a glance at this forces for change. Remember, change is always the consequence of something. What is Dalgona coffee, Michaela? I don't even know what the heck that is. Dalgona coffee. Oh, oh my word, Dalgona. I mean, is that a joke? Oh, oh my gosh, Dalgona coffee. Oh my word, where did you find this? I never even heard of it. Oh my gosh, let me screenshot this because I actually quite like coffee. It might be worth showing that to my wife. Hold on, sorry. Uh, the most unprofessional lecturer in the world. Is it? I wasn't on TikTok then. Who made their own alcohol? Rowan said he made his own alcohol. Yeah. Guys, forces for change, things that happen in the environment, the general environment, the pestle factors, the task environment, your industry environment. Also look at internal forces, and that's often when things aren't going right, hey? Yeah, obviously only ever drink tea, guys. So please also think of internal forces where things internally have gone awry. Where people aren't maintaining standards, where things have gone sideways, where there are lots of complaints about customers and from customers and customer satisfaction mistakes being made in the organization as well. Okay, I'm going to